Okay, hi everybody. I'm Alan Zatkow, head of the audio department, and today is going to be a workshop where we just set the expectations properly. We have our deadlines, and I just kind of go through what the process is. Most of you had a strategy meeting with me, but some of you didn't, and I want to make sure that everybody knows what the pertinent dates are and what to expect over the 4-month cohort that we have. So let me share my screen here and get into my little presentation. And so, uh, as I mentioned, it is going to be a 4-month cohort, which you're familiar with. Your softcover ebook cohort was 4 months, and this is also a 16-week cohort. By now, you should have passed your sound test. If you haven't yet, you're a little behind schedule. You're going to need to catch up. So um, let me know privately or in your updates room. Tag me in and tag your producer in if you haven't yet passed your sound test, and we'll make sure that you get up and running. So your raw files due date. So what this means, raw files, it really just means your first run through. Okay. And so you're going to record the entirety of your book over the course of the next 6 weeks. And your start date was 2 days ago, 10:30. Your raw files due date is Thursday, December 7th. So why Thursday and not Friday? It's because your producer needs a full day to go into your Google Drive and be able to make sure all your chapters are actually there. It's actually going to be your producer who's going to let the post-production team know that your files are there, your PDF is there. And I'm going to talk about your PDF a little bit later in this workshop today, so you understand what that's all about. But just make sure that everything is set and ready to go for your producer to check it on December 7th, which is a Thursday. And what I really mean by raw files is what you should do is you should record. I always advise recording about 25 to 30% of your book each week for the first 4 weeks. That way you have an extra 2 weeks to listen to it and do re-recordings that, with things that you don't like. Because even though it's your first, run through draft, you're only going to have one more to submit to the post-production team. So your raw files might contain 2 or 3 drafts that you've done, recordings that you've done. And your producer is going to walk you through how to properly set your files up so that post-production knows, like, okay, I messed up this sentence over here in chapter 2 and re-recorded it in this way. And we have all that stuff for you in workshops and in our paper materials as well. So as I mentioned, you really want to do at least 25% of your recordings per week over the next 4 to be on track. Your goal is to get that done, so that, because we want you to submit an audiobook that you're happy with even the first time around. So remember to update your PDF. So the post-production team is going to need an updated PDF with any word changes you make during the process. As you watch our workshops moving forward, you're going to learn about, things you've heard of, like tongue twisters, and you're going to learn about breath control issues, which is where you might have a lot of sentences in your book that are perfect, grammatically correct, no problem with them in the book, but they're impossible to say because they've got commas, semicolons are too long, and you run out of breath. Now, one thing I always like to reiterate with everybody is that it's normal for people to hear you breathing normally. Don't worry about that. That's not a mistake. Even professional narrators, I mean, we're human beings. We need to take in air. But what we don't want are those deep gulp breaths that sound, awkward. You know, um, so that's why you're going to want to practice and annotate. We have a great workshop on how to properly annotate um, your script for yourself. So you're going to have two PDFs, one that's your sort of performance PDF that no one's going to see but you, and you're going to mark it up with colors and whatever you need. But you're going to have a PDF that the post-production staff needs. If you only submit your files, your recordings, and you don't have a PDF, the post-production staff will reject it. They will not work on it. And the reason why is because they need to be able to follow along with your recordings. If there's stuff that's garbled or they can't make out something, they can just check now the PDF, go, okay, that's what that word is supposed to be. And they can make notes and go, okay, this is what you need to re-record. So it's a requirement from our post-production staff that you include this PDF. It's not optional. And literally every word needs to be accurate. So everything that you change in order to deal with tongue twisters, or what I call mind mazes, things like that, that you'll learn about over the next week or so. We need you to have a PDF that reflects all those changes and are accurate to every word. So what you probably want to do is practice what, before you just start. Don't just hit recording and go. You want to practice every chapter, find where the problems are, find where the breath control issues are, the tongue twisters, other things that you find problematic, make those alterations, and then record. And that's the way to really do it. That's the way professionals do it. And you're going to find that you're able to, have a much better recording that way, because you won't be, stumbling over things the first time. Nothing's going to catch you by surprise. If there's things that you're having difficulty saying, either you're going to highlight it so that it's coming up, or you're just going to change. Like, I can't say that word for whatever reason. You can just change it to a synonym. That's okay. And, that comes through practicing. You don't want to try and record and then stop and start and stop and start. You're never going to get into a flow, and you're not going to sound natural to your listeners, and we want you to sound great. So practice kind of makes perfect with that, to coin that phrase. So how to submit your files to post-production. So by now you should have all made a Google Drive folder, and the Google Drive folder should be set so that anyone with the link can access that folder. And that's how myself, your producer, my right hand, Stephanie McKibben, if she's not your producer, she still may need to go in there. If there's any technical issues, Stephanie's really our technical advisor on our side. And then the post-production team, you don't have one post-production editor. They're a company, and they have a team, and the whole team is going to work on your book. So we have very serious high-level professionals involved there. And so all your files are going to be in that Google Drive. And all you have to do to submit your files is tell your producer in your personal update room that your files are all ready. Now, you are allowed to have a meeting every week, or some people prefer bi-weekly, but with your producer, just to go over things. Your producer should be listening to about 10 to 15 minutes of your files every week at the beginning of your recordings and at the end, and maybe give you some notes if maybe if you're getting into a monotone, they'll catch it, or if there's a whirling fan, or like, hey, unfortunately in this chapter a plane flew over where you were recording and your mic picked it up and you got to record that. So your producer won't be listening to everything, but they'll be listening to 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time and at the beginning of your files that you submit each week, and 10 to 15 minutes at the end. But you should let them know, like, hey, I've put a chapter in. Just let your producer know so they know to go into your files, check it, make sure that it's in the right folder, that it's in the right format, and everything is technically ready to go there. So the wait period. So this is something that gets authors, because once you submit, you're like, okay, when am I going to hear from post-production? So it could take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks from the time you submit your raw files for them to be fully reviewed and the first cut of your audiobook created. Okay. So that's important for you to know. Sometimes they turn around even quicker, but it's important that you know that depending on where you are in the queue, and um, if your book is long, or if there's, you know, depending on how clean it is and all that stuff, it, depends on how long it'll take them to actually do the work. And they're very diligent. And sometimes they turn it around quick because you end up like they cleaned out the queue and you're next and boom. But sometimes it could take up to a month. There's really nothing for you to do. We'll have some workshops on the marketing aspects of it um, that you can attend, but uh, your producer is going to get the notes from the post-production team on which sections you recorded were golden and they're fine, and which ones are problematic and need a redo. So the final stretch, you're going to have 2 weeks from the time you receive your audiobook back to record the new material before the final copy needs to be resubmitted to post-production for the audiobook's final version. I know that for some of you sounds like, oh my God, only 2 weeks, but we've done hundreds of these and no one's ever had a problem with that time frame. So don't worry about it. It's typically going to take post-production another 2 to 3 weeks. Again, if they're like, hey, there's just these two things that you need to fix, and you go and you fix those two things, they might turn it around, 3 days later. On the other hand, even with that, once you resubmit it, you're back in the queue, and you might be behind a lot of other people. So typically it takes them 2 to 3 weeks to finalize it once your files are submitted. The art team is going to take your book cover and convert it into the square size file you need for your audiobook. Usually they'll have it ready by the time your polished audio files are in review by the post-production team. While they will not be creating a new cover, simply converting your book cover into its new shape, it's going to look fantastic. Always does. And you need that, like when you upload to, we'll teach you how to upload to Audible. I'll talk about that in a minute. You need that artwork in that format to be able to submit your files to the distributor. So that's why we give you that. Last chance edits, you are going to get an opportunity to listen to your audiobook after the post-production team completes it. If there are any blatant errors, they can be fixed, especially if the errors are on our side. You have my guarantee as the division head that if we make mistakes, we will fix those mistakes. So you're not going to be left hanging like, I hate this, what happened in this chapter, that. We want you to have the very best audiobook possible. Note, and this is very important, that the mistakes have to be on our side. If you're just like, I didn't really like how that came out, I'd love to, go back in and do, that's not like you were supposed to, take care of that already before you submitted the second time around. Um, if you want additional work at that point, it will cost more money if you just want to fix something that is on your side that you're like, oh, I could have done this better. So I just want to make you aware of the difference. But if you listen to your audiobook and there's a problem, and part of the audiobook, you know, was genuinely problematic, we will always fix that for you when it's on our side. Uploading your files. So just like you uploaded your softcover and ebook files to the distribution networks, you're going to do the same with your audiobook files. We're going to teach you how to create an ACX account and upload the files. As you own your audiobook, you can then decide what other distribution networks you want to upload to. And I always talk about this. People are like, why are you only going to teach us how to do Audible when there's so many out there? Well, first of all, uploading your files is pretty much identical everywhere. Once you learn how to do it with Audible, you've pretty much learned how to do it everywhere. But also, there's different business models. Some people want to sell their audiobook as its own product. And so you'll use, whether it's Spotify or other places that basically people have to buy the audiobook as its own product in order to get access to it. But some people want to monetize, say, through advertising revenues. And so you might go to a distributor like Anchor, where your audiobook will actually be distributed. Anyone can listen to it that wants to, but there'll be commercials that play during it that, Anchor has third-party advertisers that they do business with, and you get shared revenue with Anchor from that. And so there's different business models out there. So we always say, think about, how you want to do it and what's your overall goal for this audiobook. And so, Stephanie McKibben will do a little bit about marketing in a workshop later this cohort, and you'll learn a little bit more. So that's the basics of what to expect for this cohort. I'm going to open this up now to questions. I know that I tend to go a little fast, so you'll also be able to watch this recording again. And if any other questions come up when you're watching it again, you certainly can ask me later. But I'm going to open this up now to anyone who has a question about any of this or anything that I didn't cover. Go ahead, Luciana.
Yeah. Do you have a recommendation for like kick-ass audiobooks that we could listen to for kind of examples?
Wow. People ask me that, and I'm always like, it depends on your genre. I should make a little playlist for people who are, in fiction and people who are in nonfiction. I know yours is more of a informational memoir, and that we have poets, and I would just say, see, everybody's tastes are a little different, right? So I would say, what's really nice about Amazon is you can preview a ton of them, just like you can read like a chapter of the book, and you can just go to Amazon and preview a ton of audiobooks in your genre and listen to how other narrators handle certain things and overcome certain issues and deal with fiction writers want to know how to deal with, like, multiple characters, and should I use different voices for them, or in your case, if you're telling a personal story, how emotional should you allow yourself to get? That's a big one with memoir. And some people do it in different ways. Some people like to keep it, like this happened to me in the past, and I'm keeping my narrator voice and telling you this story. And some people get very emotional with how they handle an emotional story. And so you sort of, there's a lot of different styles. And that's why I've stopped answering that question, because I would give people like audiobooks that I loved and they're like, that was you know what I mean? Like, because you like what you like, you know what I mean? And you should emulate styles that you like, you know? And and so for me it's like make a playlist of audiobooks that sound great, you know, to you, and but also that are doable for you. You know, I had a guy who just had a normal voice. I mean, you know, I love James Earl Jones. You know, I'd love to. Cause I'm like, you don't talk like that. You got to sound natural. He's like, isn't there? I'm like, if, you know, James Earl Jones is like a professional actor with a rich, deep voice. You know, that's why they brought him in to be Darth Vader. You know, I mean, so the number one thing that I can want to impart to all of you is that if you don't sound natural, you don't sound like yourself, you will sound like Ronald McDonald. Okay. You don't want to sound like a clown. You want to sound like you. And that means picking a style that fits your personality, and don't go too far away from your own natural way of speaking. Some people speak faster than others. Some people have a slower drawl. That's okay. You want to sound like you. So I know that that went a little bit away from your question, but that's sort of my best answer for that right now. Is you know, there's um, thousands of audiobooks now, which is wonderful. But also miserable, right? Because it's kind of one of those things where when you go into a restaurant and there's like, you know, a small menu and you're like, okay, it's between this and this, and you go, I'll pick that. But when they give you a menu and it's, you ever go to those like diners and like, here's our menu, and it's like heavy and it's like it's got 10 pages, and you're like, what am I gonna have? Where are the specials even? Oh, they're in the middle, you know. Um, and it's almost like it takes twice as long to order because there's too many things that you could order. It's sort of like that with audiobooks now too. So that's why I suggest go and find audiobooks in your genre, listen to them, find out, you know, you don't just want to copy other people's styles, but you do want to understand what your genre, like what people that are going to buy your audiobook or listen to it are going to probably have listened to many of the other good ones in your genre, right? So, you know, make sure that you're creating something that fits the genre. Great question though. That led to a broader topic. Um, any other questions? I know most of it's self-explanatory. Like you have 6 weeks to record your raw files. You know, most people don't have a question about that, but you know, if anything, it, what
I think
did
Lucy has a question. Lucy, do you have a question?
uh,
Yes,
Lucy?
yes, I
Oh, okay. I
raised
didn't
my
see your hand up.
hand, but yeah, I have some internet issue, but I'll
Oh, okay.
go very quickly. Remember the PDF file that you want to create,
Yeah,
right? Can you still hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Oh, now I can't hear
Okay, so
you.
sorry. Yeah, otherwise I'll put it in my chat if you can't hear me.
You know what?
Okay.
If you turn off
My first
your
question is,
video,
remember the
well,
PDF
okay.
file?
Yeah, if you turn off your
Okay,
video,
so can you hear me
your
now?
audio should be better. Yeah, see, immediately that cleared up and I can
Oh,
hear you.
wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So the PDF file, so do we need to still include appendix?
Oh, that's a great question. No. So what
Okay, no.
most nonfiction writers do with their bibliography appendix, because you're not going to read your
Right.
those notes. What most do is they create their own website and they put it on their website. And that's usually how nonfiction authors handle that. And they basically go, here's the link to my audiobook, and everywhere you're distributing Audacity, and here's all of my references.
Right.
Here's my
Gotcha.
reference, and they just put they just create that on their website. So that's a good question, and it does come up a lot for nonfiction authors. No, you're certainly not gonna. No one's gonna listen to you reciting,
Right.
end notes for 20 minutes or whatever. We don't do that in audiobooks. That's just not. It's just not a thing in audiobooks.
Right. So related question,
Mhm.
in our file or in our content, we do have our citation, in-text citation, or
Mhm.
at the end of the sentence, we'll have a parenthesis, right? We
Yeah.
said, okay, NBC 2013 or something, right? So in our final file, I know that you suggested, or your team suggested, that we put it in the middle. We need to read it. So basically is we say at the beginning, some of them would be according to NBC 2013 reports,
That's it.
something.
That's exactly
And
how you want to do it.
then, but parenthesis portion, do we need to one by one remove them?
Yeah, because you do actually. I know that sounds like an arduous
I can't
task,
hear you.
but you can't hear me? Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, no, I can just for a split second. So
Oh,
we
okay.
need to remove the parentheses one
You're-
by one ourselves.
Yeah, the problem there again is that the post-production team doesn't care about formatting. The layout doesn't matter. What they need is an accurate word by word account. So the only things that should be in the PDF you give them is what you say and exactly the way you say it.
Gotcha.
And so everything that you're not going to verbally say in the audiobook needs to be eliminated. And yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's,
Okay.
Like
I
the table,
understand.
like the table of contents?
Yeah, you're not going to read off
Yeah.
the table of contents.
No. Okay.
So that's not going to be a part of your PDF.
Right. How about the acknowledgement? I have like 270 something
Put it on
backers,
your
right?
website. Put it on your website. Do
All right.
not read off.
Yes.
And now I'm going to read 270 people that contributed to my book. No, please,
especially
please don't.
Especially some of people's last name is so hard to pronounce. I don't want to
I know you can get them wrong.
like offensive.
Your name
Okay.
is so easy, right, Lucy Chen? It's very easy.
Okay.
But even my name, people can't get it right. They want to say Alan Zatkow, and it's really Zatkow, and so I'm like, no, my name doesn't rhyme with that cow. It's Zatkow, and no, you're not going to read off any of that stuff. That stuff doesn't belong in an audiobook. And it's different if you're doing, a lot of people do their dedication, things like that, which is just a short, 1 sentence, 2 sentence thing. But things like acknowledgments, things like your end notes, things like your table of contents, that stuff doesn't belong in an audiobook. So I'm glad that you all asked that. So we get that out of the way, because the last thing I want you to do is waste time recording a whole lot of stuff that we're not going to use. Go ahead, Monique.
Real quick, I've heard conflicting answers on this. My page separators or chapter separators are quotes from Powerful Women. Is that like a no-no as well? Don't record quotes.
Those are called epitaphs.
Thank you.
And so if you have the permissions to use them, you can go right ahead. Again, it's a style thing, and visually on the page that always looks gorgeous, right? And it's and some people really love to keep them because what that epitaph is about
Yeah.
sort of sets the table for the
That's
chapter.
why pretty much.
And then some people just like, to put a famous quote from, Abraham Lincoln or whatever, because, it's fun, it depends on if you feel like you need it or not. What you're
Okay.
going to do, and this is something that our voice coach, like Michelle Pollock, can really help you with, or your producer, but Michelle is really the expert on this, is like how to frame that, where it's like chapter 1, and then take a pause, and then do the epitaph and who it's by, and take a pause, and then start your chapter. Go right into your
Okay,
chapter.
great. Thank you.
And you can do it, absolutely. If you feel like they add value, then keep them.
I'll just chime in here. I have mine, every chapter is preceded by a poem that my grandmother wrote. And Michelle just directed me. She's like, either it's going to work or it's not. And you'll know when you listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about what Alan just said is that if my pause before and after doesn't really hold the space for it, and it messes with my flow, because even as a reader, I just want to get to the story. Like, I don't know if I'll be, some of my, what do you call them, beta readers, they were like, I don't like the poems. I stopped reading them,
Okay.
And I'm like, crap, but that's real, and it's like, what's going to make it more powerful? And I haven't made the decision yet. Maybe I can weave it in under chapter 1 or something like that, and it'll sound better. I just don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be sort of a game time decision. And again, like you have a producer, work with your producer, and really like have your producer, like listen to that and go, look, I've recorded some of these poems, at the beginning, and how do you think that sounds? You can also, have you had beta readers for your book, you can have beta listeners for your audiobook. You can go to some of your friends and family and advisors, people you trust. Not a lot. No, don't be like, here's 20 people listen to it. No, like 2 or 3 is enough. But if someone's like, let me put it, I always think about it this way. If one person says it, I ignore it. If a bunch of people say it, I keep the note, because everybody has their tastes, right? And it's like, I don't like tapioca pudding. Doesn't mean that tapioca pudding doesn't taste good. It means that one person doesn't like it. If 100 people taste something and are like, wow, this new flavor of pudding is awful, we all want to retch, then stay away from it, right? So that's kind of like, pick some advisors and work with you. That's what your producer is for. Your producer should be listening to you can work with your producer and say, listen, I specifically want you to listen to this. I'm particularly worried about this. Give it a listen. Give me some feedback. Let me know, what you think. And whether your producer is Simone Lamont or Michelle Pollock or Stephanie McKibben, they all have good ears for this kind of thing. And you can pull me in too if you want one more.
I got another question.
Go ahead, Lucy.
Oh, sorry. When you mentioned that if we made a mistake, I think either you today or the other day, that we need to continue to record. What if we tumble on the word and we want to repeat or re-record this entire sentence?
Yeah.
Is that how you suggest?
Yeah, because here's what happens. People do this weird thing sometimes where they're like, oh, I mess up a word in the middle of the sentence. I'm going to start in the middle of the sentence and just start with that word and say that word again. It doesn't work. What ends up happening is post-production is trying to attach the top of a sentence that you said and then the bottom of a sentence that you said at 2 different times. And then you sound like RoboCop. It sounds terrible. You sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. It's really bad. What you want to do everybody messes up. That's 100% of everybody. So don't feel bad about it. Just stop, go back 2 or 3 sentences and start your recording from there. And if you do that, then it's going to be natural. You might start at the beginning of the paragraph. It depends. If you're like 6 sentences into to an 8-sentence paragraph, you don't have to start 6 sentences ago. You can just start a couple. But what you want to do, again, the number one thing here is sound natural, right? So if you nobody starts a sentence in the middle of a sentence, right? It would sound like this, middle of a sentence. You know what I mean? Like, I can't make that sound natural if I'm starting at the word middle. You know what I mean? I can't do it. So I have to go back and I have to start at the beginning of that sentence and maybe the beginning of that thought to make it all sound great. So great question, Lucy. That's exactly right. You don't want to start on the word you messed up on. You want to make sure that you have a natural flow sounding at all times. And so that's about going back I see you, Megan. I'm just going to finish this thought. But basically, that's the key is to make sure that you start in a place that's a correct starting place so that it sounds great. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I'm just, so I've started recording and I am totally baffled by how challenging it is. And okay. I'm okay with it. I finally had to give up starting over several times to just accept that I'm going to make a mistake. And so now my question is, I've got the concept of going back to the previous sentence and just starting again to just kind of keep that voice natural sounding. I want to know, there are moments in my recording where I've had to do it like 4 times, right? I just, whatever, I tripped somewhere else. I've noticed sometimes like I'll have a gasp of air at the beginning of a word. And I'm like, that doesn't record well. It sounds terrible. So I've like, okay, if I can catch it, then I'll start again. And I'm supposing because you guys have done so many of these, that's understandable. But I figure, is that okay?
So here's the answer to that. So this is why we talk about practicing and annotating. Yeah. And we've got a wonderful workshop that Michelle Pollock does on how to annotate your script. I actually have
I saw it. Yeah.
So
I've annotated, I've practiced, I've done all of that. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, there's nothing else you can do. Like if you continue to do audiobooks in the future, you're going to get better and better at them, just like everybody. Hello, Doggy. Just like everybody. But you just have to accept, first of all, part of the problem is that and I do see your hand up, Lucy, so we'll have your question next, but let me address Megan's issue here. You're not going to get it perfect, and this is something else that I want to stress. Everybody hates how their own voice sounds. Everybody hates how their own voice sounds. Except James Earl Jones. He doesn't hate how his own voice sounds. But everybody, when I listen to this workshop later, I'm going to hate how my own voice sounds recorded. It's just the way it is. It's part of it is a little bit of imposter syndrome, especially for those of you that are doing this for the first time. But professional actors even have it. And you have to just get over it. Now, if you're talking about actual errors where you're stumbling and this and that, there's all you can do is re-record it until you get it. I mean, there's nothing you can do otherwise, because it's a process. But I will promise you this: it gets easier as you get into your flow. It gets easier as you get into your comfort zone of, okay, how many words can I say before I need a breath of air? How many sentences can I say before I'm actually drained and I'm starting to lull into a monotone? How long can I go? What's my stamina? You know, and as you get used to positional things like, are you sitting in a comfortable chair? Do you have the microphone right? You know, so that it's, and you don't want to be leaning forward for 90 minutes. You'll get back issues, neck issues, you know. So you want to be able to be comfortable, and you want to be able to be just focused, but also you want to be having a good time. Really, if you're not having a good time, like, it comes out, people hear that. They hear more stress than narration. And I always talk about, you know, do something fun, or even watch like a funny movie, you know, or whatever, before you know, if you can, like, not the whole, you know, depend on your time constraints, but if you just pop up, you know, 15 minutes of something really funny, and you know, and Saturday Night Live, they did this funny music video called "Throw It on the Ground." I don't know if you've ever seen that one, and that makes me laugh so hard every time I see it, that before I'm gonna do something, I watch that, and it puts me in a great mood, and then, you know, I'm ready to go. And and so you want to have the right attitude about it, and just understand that if this was easy, everybody would be banging one of these out every other week. It's not easy. It's why we have, you know, a producer with you, why we try and have, as you know, a professional production schedule, why I have this meeting with you, and why you're not alone in the cohort, because making an audiobook, people sometimes who have never done one are like, I'm just going to talk into a mic and read my book, easy. It's not easy. They find out, you're finding out it's not easy. So did I answer that for you, or yeah? All right, Lucy, go ahead.
For our raw files, my plan is to record myself one chapter or one file for one chapter.
That's right.
But
Yep.
some of the chapters are too long. Do you suggest that I separate to, like, okay, chapter 5-1-2?
No, understand this. The only people who are going to see that are the post-production crew, right? Your audience isn't gonna. Your audience is just gonna hear you go chapter 5, and you're gonna read all of chapter 5. It's not too long for our post-production crew, so it's a non-factor. You're thinking about what you're thinking about right now, Lucy, is the fact that your revision editors talked about word count and chopping it to make it an easy read for your readers in your softcover book. And I understand that. I was a revisions editor for many years, and helped authors get the right word count in their book. In an audiobook, that's of no consequence. That's irrelevant. So you don't need to worry about that. If it's chapter 5 in your book, we don't care if it's 1,000 words or 10,000 or 50,000 for one chapter. From the post-production crew's standpoint, they're looking at the whole project. They don't care.
Okay.
So that's, don't worry about that. Good question.
Okay. But one related question is, for the long chapters,
Yeah.
it would take me maybe two recordings, right? So like
Okay,
in the
yeah.
morning, like 1 hour, in the afternoon, another hour. So do you want me to combine the two files, or where I hit
Yeah, all
a
you're
pause
gonna
button?
do, all you're gonna do is, hit stop, where you stop the first day, and then hit, record again right from that point, and keep it the same file. That's all.
Oh, okay. Keep it
Yeah,
in the same file, but I
yeah,
can record in the different times.
that's
Okay,
right. Yeah, you can.
gotcha.
Yeah, that's allowed. That's fine. Yeah, you don't have to make it a different file on different days. That's
Gotcha.
that's and again, that's why we're having this meeting, to talk about things like that. Because this is your first time doing it, technical questions like that are excellent questions. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. If it's chapter 5, if it's all chapter 5, let it all be chapter 5 in one file. It's all good. Even if it takes 2 or 3 recordings, whatever it takes.
Okay, I have another concern, not necessarily a question for you, but I
Okay.
welcome your feedback since your experience. Since English is not my native language, so it will
Mhm.
take me some time to practice
Right.
and then record, and also including doing some research on, okay, people's name or pronunciation,
Okay.
annotation, I mean, tones and everything. So it will take me more time, but I have 2 upcoming trips. And then after December, mid-December, I'll have another trip. So
Well,
my concern is,
reiterate that when it comes to individual calendar stuff, what you want to do is strategize with your producer. The best plan for you, Lucy, is book a meeting with your producer and strategize. Here's your word count. Here's how many times you feel like you have to practice and annotate and get things done, and really work out a game plan that's going to work for you. And as far as, like, if you need um to request certain things calendar wise, your the process, and this is for all of you, it's a good question again. The process is for you to bring it to your producer. Your producer already knows how far they can stretch things. If it's a request that would take you outside of our normal guidelines, your producer will have a meeting with me and bring it to me, and we'll discuss it, and we'll figure out, what we can do and what we can't do. There are certain things that we can do that won't interrupt our staff's flow and our post-production staff's flow. And then there's things that, will. And the problem we used to get into is that people would stop and start, and our post-production team would never know when they were getting files or not. And the problem for Marco, who's, the head of that company, is he's hiring post-production editors based on how much work he has coming in from his clients, with us being one of his primary clients. So if he sees that like 5 people are doing audiobooks, or he sees that 15 people are starting their audiobooks, and he's expecting a certain amount of files to come in at certain times, so he's expecting the work, and he hires people, and he has all these computers and expensive equipment that he didn't need, because now people are going away, and we're not going to do the second half for another 4 months. That's where we got into a lot of issues. So that's why we have these deadlines, and they're hard deadlines, and we have to adhere to them. But if you get the first draft in, again, like the first deadline here is December 7th. So that's before your first trip. I don't mind breaking it up so that if they have the work and we have those raw files done, and then we know that you're going to be, a lot of people are gone in December, late December and early January. I myself will be gone from December 11th to December 17th. So, I get it that this is a time when everybody takes vacations or work trips, for end of the year, sales meetings and things like that. I get it. But you know, if you have a unique situation, bring it to your producer. Your producer already has guidelines. And so if it goes outside the bounds of those guidelines, your producer will come to me with the request, and I may go to Marco and confer with Marco. And then we'll come back and we'll make a plan. And that's all I can say about it. All right.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Certainly. Anyone have any other good questions? This has been a great Q&A session.
I have a last question. Sorry.
Okay.
I
Nothing
haven't
to
met with
apologize
Michelle.
for.
That's why I kind of down all of my questions.
Yeah, Michelle's on vacation. She's having a wonderful time. She went on this grandiose 2-week vacation to Europe, so she's still checking in with her messages. But yeah, she's on vacation, so she'll be back soon though. But go ahead, Lucy.
So in my book, there are several places that I have
I'm sorry, we're
these
losing you.
characters because I
You're
want to
fading out.
say, okay, this translated into some meaning, right? But the original.
Yep, I lost you.
Can you still hear me?
Now you're fading in and out. But what I heard was that you have certain things that are in non-English language
Okay.
in your
Can you
book
still
that
hear me?
now I can hear you.
Lucy, you're coming in and out, so your audio is unstable. Is there a way for you to reboot or something?
I have a feeling that this is a question that Lucy. I have a feeling Lucy that this question is one that we can address privately, because I don't know if anyone else here has non-English stuff in their book that, you're basically talking about stuff from other languages that you translate into English in your book, if I heard that right.
Right. I do have some characters there. So do I put the pronunciation in the final PDF so that the production team understand I was
again,
that?
Anything that you're verbally saying, yes, that would be good to phonetically spell that out for the post-production team. That would be very helpful for them, so you know what you're trying to say.
I have a question. I have a title called Boring AF, and the AF stands for as fuck. So do I audibly say boring as fuck? I mean, I really made myself like, what do I do?
Oh boy, that's a great one, a great question, and that really depends on the overall maturity level of your book. If there's profanity throughout,
I put the title, I kept the title as boring as fuck, and then later on in the chapter when it was basically the conversation was around the writing boring AF, I then used boring AF there so that you kind of got a combination of the two.
No one's gonna get it if you go boring AF. You might just change it to something else.
Everybody knows that AF is as fuck, so you can go either way. You don't need to spell it out for people because they know AF is that.
All right. Well, fair enough.
Or maybe you can put the F word.
Well, that's what it is.
The asterisk and the K.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is when I originally I had it spelled out A and then F with the 4 stars after it or whatever. And the editor was like, no.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. We don't.
So this gets really kind of interesting. Yeah.
But again, that stuff with the 4 stars has no relevance here because you're really talking about how to verbally say it.
Yeah.
So you can either say it or as Monique pointed out, if people are going to get it,
spell
it or change it.
Yeah. Or change it. Okay. Thank you.
So you've got 3 options there. And really, again, this is one where you want to go to A, your beta listeners, and B, your producer. These situations where you're like, I'm not sure what to do here, that's when you use your community. That's what they're for. And that's where you also hit up your producer and get some quality advice from your producer. It's probably something that your producer has seen before and has had a number of instances, or just has some quality thoughts about it where you can collaborate in a meeting about that. Great question. All right. Are we?
Great.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Wow, we went all the way to 3 o'clock. Oh, you have one
Oh,
more, buddy?
thank you.
No, I wanted just to stay on, just to address my timing.
Oh, yeah,
of-
yeah. What I'm gonna do though is we're gonna end the meeting
Yeah, and the call.
because I have to put this
Record
up
it.
as a recording
Yep.
for everyone to watch, and then I will start a new one, and I'll
Okay.
send you the link in your update room. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so
Can we
much.
stay,
Thank
can
you,
we stay on this
Alan. Thank
link?
you, everyone.
No? You
No,
can
no,
stop
because-
recording without, you can stop
Oh, yeah,
recording
you're
without.
right. You're right.